Welcome to Deeply Rooted, a podcast by Planting Roots, a ministry for military women by military women.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Deeply Rooted podcast by Planting Roots. My name is Erin, and if you're just joining in, today we're on episode 4, I believe, of a series called So There I Was, where I get the opportunity to sit down with some awesome women in the military community and hear about their stories. Today, my guest on the podcast is one of my really good friends, Lauren Williamson. Lauren is probably the only person that I'm going to have on this series who is neither military, active duty military, nor a military spouse, which sounds kind of interesting, but I promise you it'll relate. And Lauren and I met when I was at the Coast Guard Academy, but I'll save the rest of her bio for when she shares her story. So Lauren, welcome to the podcast.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me on, Erin. I'm excited to share. I know that usually your guests are military wives or in the military themselves, and so I'm excited to kind of bring a little bit of a different perspective.
Yeah, so Lauren, jump right in right there. What's your story and how do you relate to this military community then?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say I did just graduate college, but 4 years ago, I never would have thought that I would be anywhere close to being part of the military community. So it's really cool how God works things into our lives that become huge blessings that we just had no idea that we would get to experience. So originally I'm from Alabama. That's where I grew up. I was born and raised there. And I was raised in a Christian family, but I didn't actually surrender my life to the Lord until I was 17. So I was in high school and starting to look at colleges, and I really wanted to go. A lot of you will be familiar listening to Wheaton College in Illinois. Good Christian school. I thought, this is great. Like, I just became like an actual Christian. Like, I know a lot about God, but now I actually know him, and I'm ready to lead Bible study and do all these things at Christian college. And then through a certain turn of events, people in my life didn't want me to go, and I had to look at other options. And so I had applied to Connecticut College, which is in New London, Connecticut. Just on a whim, they had a figure skating team, and I had grown up doing that. And I thought, okay, like I like to jump into new things, and so I just signed on the dotted line and went to Connecticut. I had never been, but I thought this could be a really good adventure. So got up to Connecticut and started attending Shoreline Community Bible Church, which is downtown. And that is where I met some Coast Guard Academy cadets for the first time. And I thought, okay, like I had no idea the Coast Guard was across the street. The academy was there in New London too. But these are some cool people, and there's not a huge Christian community already at Con. It's a liberal arts school, but it's also very politically liberal and not super friendly to Christians. And so they invited me out to Friday Night Fellowship, which has maybe been talked about on the podcast before, but if not, just quickly, it's a fellowship opportunity for Officers Christian Fellowship kids to come and worship and do Bible study and have class coordinator sessions and just spend good time in community on Friday nights. So I was invited out to that as a civilian, and immediately I was launched into a world of acronyms and military time and all sorts of things that I had just never come into contact with. But I really live by go big or go home. And so I thought, okay, like this is I'm already in Connecticut. This is a totally new experience for me. And this is a really cool community just of people that want to get real and genuine and who are so on fire for God. Like, I had never been around people that on fire for the Lord. And so started going to Friday Night Fellowship and spending time at the Officers Christian Fellowship retreat house up the road, Shepherd's Fold, going to all sorts of different OCF events, and just spending time in fellowship on the weekends, whether it was playing Frisbee or going out to eat or working on cars, just anything that that the group was doing, I was there. And yeah, that became like family to me. Over the next few years, Erin and I became really close. We had plenty of other like really close brothers and sisters there. And that community is what has kept my faith growing during college. So that's my story. I had no intention of being involved with the military or learning about cutters or anything that had to do with the Coast Guard. I love it now. I've like gone deep. I know I can tell you different call signs of boats, and maybe I'm not proud of the amount of times I've seen the Guardian, but I love the Coast Guard. I love my friends for putting up with me, and a lot of it just came from listening to them. And that's one of my big pieces for intentional like friendship with my military friends is just observation, because you guys spend enough time at work explaining all the terms that you need to and just trying to understand your job. You don't need me asking a million more questions. So a lot of that just came from observation. But being involved with the military community is without a doubt one of the biggest blessings of my time in college.
Oh, I love hearing it because I was right there with you, like when you lived it. But I love when you like tell it because it is super cool. And I mean, God does that where He does the unimaginable, where you have absolutely no idea. Like, who would have thought? It's like one of those, like, this is my story, and I couldn't have done it without the Lord sort of stories. And that's why I love it so much. And I wanted to have you on the podcast specifically to talk about friendship. And obviously, I mean, you're one of my best friends, so I'm biased in thinking that you're one of the best friends ever. But also what you just talked about, the intentionality, the observation, the genuine heart that you have in getting to know your friends at a deeper level, that's something that, I mean, that makes a good friendship. And more people, I think, would benefit from understanding, I guess, the effort that it does take to become really good friends with people. I think sometimes it's glamorized and we think of friendship as just like hanging out and something that's super easy, but friendship is not necessarily an easy thing, and it takes a lot of work. And so I just really appreciate that. I mean, for me, as someone in the military, it's tempting to, when I get to a new place, to only connect with my military bunch because I know that I'm only going to be there for a couple of years. And then same thing for on the civilian side, I can see that it'd be tempting for civilian people, whether that be at my church or, you know, in different community groups that I get involved with, to not necessarily see the fruit in getting involved at a deep level with someone in the military, because again, they're only there for a couple of years. And what I've learned is that if I don't dive in deep quick, and if I don't try for that, then it's never going to happen. And then I'm going to find myself at the end of my 4-year tour, or whatever it may be, without any friends. And so I think it's really good encouragement for our listeners, both on the military side, and then if there are any civilians, friends, wives, whatever it may be watching this, just the importance and how much we need you in the military. Like, it was so important to me and so helpful for me to have somebody on the outside of it all. So you have a different perspective that I do, but that also has put in the effort to understand my life. That's been super, super, super huge. And I'm very, very thankful for your friendship.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you said, especially about having that outside perspective. I know that when I first started becoming friends with cadets and with all of you guys at the academy, it definitely did feel like I was entering like an alien world, and I was on the outside, and I, in a way, remained on the outside the whole time, but also never felt like I was, I don't know, what, like put in an other category. But I think you guys really did appreciate having somebody that both understood what you were going through, but you were able to talk about things that had nothing to do with your CER or your OER or anything with classes or rank or the PFE, but just you could still go deep with on all things related to the Lord or just random things that you're going through like personally. But I was still able to hear you out when you just wanted to vent about what was going on at the academy. And I think what we had talked about many times was being able to listen, but also remind you guys when your identity was being put too much in your military rank or where you were going on your first tour, or even like class rank academics. Being able to listen and observe and love you well through reminding you this is not your home, and just because this is related to your future career and it is a big deal, it doesn't have to be where you place your identity and where you're getting your hope from, because that is destructive. And so, and sometimes that would feel like out of place, like I would be overstepping or something, but that's, I think, important in all friendships. Like, you have to be aware of like where stumbling blocks are for your friends so that you can point them back to the Lord and their identity in the Lord. And I think what you said too about, oh, maybe I don't want to invest my time in this relationship or that with civilians because I'm only going to be here for a few years, or maybe that is the civilian perspective for many. This world isn't our home anyway. I'll say it again. It's so important.
Yeah.
And even in the military community, people are moving around every 2, 3, 4 years. And so no matter what, going deep when you can in person and then staying connected, visiting, and just doing life together from afar when you can't be in person is so important, because that's how we spend most of our time. You and I got 4 year or 3 years to be in person together, and now we try to visit whenever we can. We see each other at a lot of weddings, a lot, and we do life from afar. But it doesn't mean that we're less connected. We're not in person. But that's why going deep when you are in person is so important, to lay that foundation for friendship when you're afar.
Absolutely. And I really like what you touched on with us and our identity in the military, because I mean, this is a temptation in any job, in any career field that you're in, but especially military, when so much of your life is wrapped up in your job. It's a unique field in that sense. But I think, like you said, super, super tempting to find our identity in that and to get too wrapped up in that, especially I would say at an academy or in college when, I mean, you're living it 24/7 and we can't leave campus, all that. Yeah, you need those friends on the outside. You need family on the outside. You need all that. So that's super, super important and a good reminder. And then another thing with that is that I think it'd be really easy for us as military members to have expectations that civilians need to come into our world without necessarily feeling the same responsibility to meet them where they're at. So like with you as a friend, I think you did such a good job at meeting me where I was at and learning the terminology and like learning what I was interested in and understanding academy life and military life. But it was, I mean, just from a friendship point of view, the responsibility is two ways. To be fully loved is to be fully known. And so if I'm not putting that same effort in getting to know you and your life at College and your figure skating life, your academics, like how things work over there, then like it goes both ways. And so I just wanted to make that clear too for military members. It's like sometimes I think we'll get stuck in this box and I mean, think that we're special. I mean, we are in a sense, like we're different, yes, but also like just because we're different, that doesn't mean that they need to come into our world. We also have responsibility, and we'll find a lot of fruit if we step out of our world once in a while and go talk to the girls at church and understand that even if our lives are different than them, that doesn't mean that we can't find common ground. Because especially when you have the Lord in common, like that's the best common ground that you can have.
Absolutely. And that was the foundation of all of our friendships when we were in college, was we had the Lord in common, and we started from there and then found out that we had a lot more in common, a lot of us. And that's how we were able to build friendships and ultimately feel like one big community and one family. And I think the idea of loving your friends well, loving them intentionally, we talked about identity and pointing people back to the Lord, but whether it was looking for areas where you guys were in need, like not being able to leave or not having cars, and being able to step in and fill that need and drive places and pick things up. There's things that I was able to, or ways I was able to serve all of you, and there were ways that you all were able to serve me when I wasn't able, or when I just needed company or needed my car fixed. Plenty of guys were willing to step in and do that. Or it's like countless things that were things only you guys could do, and serve, like ways that you served me well and loved me well in friendship. And then on the flip side of that, ways that I was able to step in and love you guys well. And so that's the like mutual building up in friendship. I think that all of us experienced.
And I think we sometimes neglect the physical way that we can meet people's needs as a form of friendship. I think we often look at, I mean, the intimacy part of it, which is super important. I mean, intimacy is like into me you see, so like having deep conversations and, you know, understanding each other's likes, dislikes, like that's important. But also, like you said, bringing me coffee when I can't leave campus, like that was a way that I felt so absolutely loved beyond measure. And I knew that you were my true friend because of, like, I mean, acts of service. It's part of the 5 love languages, right? So the physical needs, I think, are often overlooked, and sometimes they're super easy. Like offering to drive when none of us have cars until we're seniors. Like that's such a small thing, but also, I mean, it takes a toll. It's an act of service. It's going to require something of you. But also, again, to our listeners, I just encourage you to look at the physical needs that the people around you might have, the potential friends, future friends, current friends, and see how you can meet their needs. See where you can meet them where they're at and come into their world, step into their world, and recognize how you can be a better friend to them physically. That's super important.
Absolutely. And I think another way that you can like step out in friendship and start building more of a foundation too, whether you're a wife or you're in the military and you have contact with civilian friends, is through prayer. My first prayer partner was at the academy. I was a freshman. It was spring of 2020. And my prayer partner was a senior. And she had formation at like, I think 6. I'm not 100%, but we got up at 5:30 and prayed on the phone, even though she was just across the street. But that's what we did. And it brought so much joy into my morning and intentionality. So Monday through Friday, we would get up and pray. And it was never a long like preamble, just maybe a couple minutes for her and a couple minutes for me. And then good morning, like have a good day. And that was it. But that's like starting your day in community and starting your day with the Lord. And we continued that through COVID once we were sent home and into the summer. And that was one of the first times that I really got experience in praying around others and learning to just forget that they're there and be before the Lord, but also being able to lift up her needs to the Lord and knowing that she's lifting up my needs because we're doing it right there together. And that's something that like we continue to do occasionally. I'll just call her up and usually she's free. Sometimes she's not and she'll call me back later, but she's states away and I can still just call her and we can pray and I know that she's there for me. And so even though we're not close or only occasionally are we able to pray together in person, we have that relationship that's grounded in the Lord, and that's so special to me.
What you're saying about prayer, again, super powerful, not only as a spiritual discipline, but also something that can bring you so much closer with other people. I mean, when we were prayer partners, I specifically last year, just as you walked through my senior year with me, getting married with me, I mean, we were praying for our future husbands far before my husband came along as my husband. Wow. Just the fact that we can walk those big life things and the little life things, whether that be an exam that I have that morning or the fact that I'm nervous about the fitness test that I have to take in the afternoon, like to walk through those little life things with someone and without it taking much time. Like you're saying, it doesn't have to be this big, glorious, you don't have to go weekend trips every weekend with the girls. Like it can be as simple as a 5-minute phone call in the morning twice a week. Something simple but intentional that helps you get to know them. And like you were talking about your couple words, intentionality, observation, like all those are super, super crucial in friendship.
What would you say is one of the most like important things that our military members listening are looking for in civilian friendships?
I would say simply the effort in being seen and being known. I think that oftentimes we feel, especially as women in the military, we feel like we're just in a whole different category. And although we do relate to civilians in so many ways, we feel like they might put us in a box sometimes and see us differently. But like, especially with the civilian friends at church that I have, like we have so much more in common aside from the military. Like the military is just my job, right? And so the friends that I have that are really deep and really good, they see me outside of that. And so I'd say that is important to see, just like I see you outside of your major, you know, like everyone in the civilian world, it's easier to see someone outside of their job. And I think that for military members, it's important to do the same thing. Realize that they're still people. I'm still a female in my early 20s, you know, so it's like we're not that different. And I think for them to understand that and then to again, be willing to come into our worlds, even if we're only going to be there for a short time, realize that we're still people and we need them too.
Yeah,
thank you for that question.
That absolutely answers it. And I think as women, we know like our identity is one of the biggest ways that Satan tries to attack. And so when we are unsure of how people in our community or community adjacent are accepting us or seeing us in our identity, that can be shaking. It can be unsteady and unsure. But knowing that there are people in the military and civilians that see you and know you fully and love you for who you are, and also recognize your job and its importance, but remind you that it's not everything and that you are first and foremost a daughter of the King before any of that. That's really important, and I hope that's been something that has underpinned our friendship and our friendship with our other military members.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you the same question now. So, what is something that I, as a military member, can do for you as a civilian to help deepen our friendship and be a better friend?
Yeah, I think a lot of it you and our other friends have lived out for sure, but part of it is the patience and just letting me into your world, even if you just want to be known as a 20 something or for our listeners, 30 something, 40 something, 50, who knows, as just a woman first or a wife, and then letting me into your job second or third priority, letting me into your life so that I do know what's going on and also know how to pray for you and know the unique challenges that you face. That's so important. And then just the effort too, and communication. Effort goes both ways. So even if your military friend is moving or has moved many times and you go visit them, there's plenty of opportunity for effort, even if it doesn't look like a visit, to go both ways, where you can be met in your effort to stay friends and to stay close. Yeah, I think those are incredibly important. And just communication. It doesn't have to be anything super long and complex. It can just be a text or just be a quick email, or a quick phone call. But yeah, small things that just say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm like an active supporter in your life, even if you're far away. And I'm here for what you need. I want to be a sister and support you and lift you up." That's so important.
Thank you for that insight. I think that's going to be very helpful for our military folk listening, especially just active duty women. And I think for friendship in general, military aside, the big message that we really want to push here is to be a good friend, you have to be interested, genuinely interested in people and getting to know their stories, which again is the heart of this series. Just be interested in getting to know who they are, who God made them to be. It'll reveal things about yourself, about God's character, and it'll help you be a better friend and more supportive, whether you're active duty military, a wife, or a civilian in this case. So thank you for sharing that. And then one other thing I really wanted to mention to our listeners, and another reason I wanted to talk about this topic, is because for the wives listening, I know that this is probably good advice for loving your husband. I mean, you as a military wife are not going to understand every single thing that they do at work, just like they're not going to understand every single thing that you do in your job or at home with the kids. So this is good advice for understanding what they do, being intentional, observant, doing your own research. Like Lauren has said, she knows probably more about cutters and different classes of cutters and all that than I do because she's put in the time to look into it. So, I mean, simple things like that can go a long way. And then also for wives and for military women, I think oftentimes, I'm not going to say conflict. I don't know that that's the right word, but I know that there can be differences and some angst between the two groups, between wives and between active duty women. And I guess I'm just here to tell you that as an active duty woman and a wife myself, we need each other. I mean, especially as an active duty woman now, I need people on the outside, and especially people who are not active duty but understand the life. So wives specifically, we need each other. I need your friendship. And so this is really good advice, I think, too, just for those groups and interacting with each other. Just care about each other. Simply get to know each other, ask the deep questions, put yourself in each other's shoes to try to understand each other's worlds. It'll go a long way in strengthening this military community that we have, and just friendships in general, because women need community, and sometimes it's hard, it's not easy, it takes time and effort, but it's worth it. So I just wanted to say that. Lauren, do you have any last minute things to say to our audience? I thank you so much for being on here today, especially, again, as someone who is outside of this community, but also very much in this community.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I think a lot of what I've said has to do with the ideas of belonging and kindness, just being willing to maybe feel like you don't belong at first. I didn't feel like I belonged in the military community at first, and it took time, and it took all the things that you just said to start to integrate and find my place, even if it wasn't amongst the Corps of Cadets. But you guys were kind enough to be patient with me and kind of open up your life to me, and I hope I was able to do the same. And whether it's amongst wives and military women, just being kind to one another. I know there's a certain sense of belonging and being in the military for being actually an active duty member. And then for being a wife, there's a different sense of belonging. But when you're kind and you just extend curiosity, you just want to be curious about someone else's perspective and their experience, that fosters a whole lot more of a friendship than any sort of competition or faux kindness or any of that ever could. Just genuinely being curious and being kind, extending kindness. That's what the Lord has done to us. And that's our goal to do to each other. So yeah, it's been so fun being part of that community in college. And I'm so excited that my friendships, they don't end, of course, after 4 years. And so I get to continue to be part of this community with all of the people that I'm able to support who are active duty or reserves. And it's so fun to see what they're doing with their lives and careers.
Well, thank you, Lauren. And one last question before you hop off. And having so many military friends, have you been tempted to come over and join the dark side yourself?
I have. I'll let the audience know, yes, for all of you listening. I'm just about to head to Macedonia, to North Macedonia, for a year to teach English on a Fulbright scholarship. But after I return, my goal is law school and then direct commissioning into Coast Guard JAG. So just being around the service, I definitely am biased after being around all the cadets, but just the non-combat oriented nature of the service and all of the different humanitarian missions create for a really interesting and complex legal field. And that's an area that I really want to work in. So hopefully, God willing, that's what happens. I would love to be a military member one day. And if not, then it'll be something else really cool that God wants me to serve him in. So either way, but I have definitely been tempted and I'd like to make a career out of it. So we'll see.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. And again, just revealing how God works in mysterious ways. And we don't always know his plan as we head into it. But looking back, it's so clear to see that God had you exactly where you needed to be. And I'm so thankful for your friendship and for you being on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you all for watching today. Make sure that you subscribe to this podcast and give it a thumbs up, leave a review, whatever podcast platform you're listening on, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on Deeply Rooted, a podcast by Planting Roots, a ministry for military women by military women. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us on all social media platforms, or drop over to our website, www.plantingroots.net, to sign up for our Planting Roots newsletter. You don't want to miss the inspirational and practical resources developed with you in mind.